All right, I'm going to get us started here. As more folks come in, please continue to tell us where you are coming in from. My name's Dawn. I'm the political director for the student PIRGs based in St. Petersburg, Florida. I have the privilege of moderating this panel of 4 incredible young activists. And I am as excited as all of you, I'm sure, in the audience to hear their stories and be inspired. This event is part of the Solutions to Plastic webinar series, sponsored by all of these folks that you see on the slide here. I want to thank all the sponsors for including young voices in the series overall. Encourage everyone who's on to join the rest of the series as well. So before we dive into everyone's content and all the questions I have for these folks, let me introduce our panelists. So we have Clara Castranova, who is a second year at UCLA. She's from the Bay Area. So I know some folks on here from Berkeley and the Bay already as well. She's the chair of the UCLA CALPIRG chapter and coordinates the Beyond Plastics campaign. Thank you for joining us and telling your story, Clara. We also have Emma, who is a freshman at the University of Florida, already leading on the issue of plastics. She's from Hollywood, Florida, and founded and led the Surfrider Youth Club for 4 years, and is now a member of the Surfrider Foundation Youth Leadership Council. So hi, Emma. We're not too far down here in St. Pete. And then we've got Dillon, who's a junior at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. He's from Sebastopol, California, the co-president of the Cal Poly Surfrider chapter and co-founder of the EcoSurf project. Thanks for joining us, Dillon. And certainly last but not least, we've got Alex Gordon, who's a senior at Eckerd College in Florida. She's from Houston, Texas. She's the program coordinator for Florida PIRG here at Eckerd, but then also works with PIRG chapters and communities across the country on plastics. She didn't put it on the slide, but she's also one of the 2021 winners of the Brower Youth Awards, which highlights youth environmental leaders across the country. So very excited to have Alex on as well. I feel connected to all of you as I am from California and went to school in Northern California and have been in Florida for the last 5 years. And my dad actually went to UF. So a lot of coast to coast connections here. So as you can see, all of these students who are on today are from that work with the Surfrider Foundation or work with the student PIRGs. So I'll just let them introduce the groups overall so you know a little bit more about the national groups they work with.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Emma. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Surfrider Foundation. We were founded by surfers in 1984, and we're dedicated to the protection of global oceans, beaches, and coasts. So we have volunteers all over the country, even out of the country. I think we have a chapter in Canada now. And we have dozens of campaigns that are essential to our mission and our work. And these campaigns focus on our priorities, which are coastal preservation and clean water.
Emma, you're cutting out a bit. Okay, we'll have Emma back in a second. I'm gonna pop it over to you, Clara, to talk about the student PIRGs, and I'll pop it back to Emma when we have her back.
Of course, thank you so much. So yeah, again, my name is Clara. I'm just gonna quickly give an overview of the student PIRG. So student PIRG stands for Student Public Interest Research Group. We're a student-run and student-funded activist group working on behalf of the public interest. We were started 50 years ago in the 70s by students who wanted to make a difference on issues that they cared about and fight for a brighter future. Students have always been at the forefront of social change, from the civil rights movement to environmental protections. And so the student PIRG pairs the passion and drive of students with professional expertise of organizers and advocates so that we can run strategic grassroots campaigns and win. And our mission is to give students the skills and opportunities to take action for a change. And there's really profound issues and solutions that students want to work on, and Student PIRGs helps to execute that vision. And so we have chapters on nearly 100 campuses in 25 states, where we organize students to fight for change on issues like fighting climate change, protecting public health and the environment, alleviating poverty on campuses, making higher education more affordable, and revitalizing our democracy. Can you move to the next slide? Awesome. This works really well. We have lots of victories nationwide. In 2020, our New Voters Project registered 1 million students to vote. Nationally, we also introduced the first pilot program for free open source textbooks for students. And to just highlight some quick state victories, in Oregon, Augsburg students passed a polystyrene ban. Here in California, we passed SB 100 for 100% clean energy in the state by 2045. And also in Massachusetts, they passed a ban on neonic pesticides to save the bees. So we've done a lot of work on a lot of different issues, and this is just a little bit about us. And if you're interested in getting involved at your local PIRG chapter, you can volunteer, do an internship, and I will put the link in the chat right now.
Cool. Let's go back to Emma.
Sorry about that. My Wi-Fi went out for a second. So if you're interested in becoming a volunteer or getting involved with Surfrider, you can find your local chapter or club if you go to surfrider.org/volunteer. And you can also find more information on our programs and campaigns on the Surfrider website.
All right, great. And that is the link right there. And we'll drop it in the chat for y'all as well. So now I'll just have each of the panelists talk about some of their impressive work, just to give everyone an idea of some of the great campaigns and successes that are happening across the country driven by young people. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions in the end. So if you do have questions as things come along, please drop them in the Q&A, and we will come around and have the panelists address them. All right, I'll pass it back over to you, Clara.
Thank you so much. So one of the main goals of the Student PIRG system is to cause policy change. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about how we do that at CALPIRG by collecting support and delivering it to elected officials during our statewide lobby day. So just for some context, we have 4 major tactics that we take, which are grassroots, grassroots, media, and visibility. We gather a lot of grassroots support through petition signatures, like personal letters from students, and also signing up pledging members from all of our UC campuses. And we also work with various VIPs for the grass-top side, like small business owners, maybe expert faculty, or even student government. And we also use visibility to get media attention. The picture on this slide is from a CALPIRG rally that was after the Huntington Beach oil spill, where we were able to have Senator Min attend, and he actually authored a bill about offshore oil drilling that's in the legislative cycle right now in California. So that's pretty exciting. So all of the work that we do around these different tactics, we deliver it to our legislators during our lobby meetings so that they can understand how much support we've gathered and how much students care about this issue. Go to the next slide, please. Awesome. This works really well. I just wanted to highlight a recent win that the UCLA chapter, as well as the USC chapter, just had recently. It was a couple weeks ago, where we worked to get the LA County Board of Supervisors to pass an ordinance limiting single-use plastics in the county. And this is a super big deal, especially because we were facing pushback from the plastics industry and the restaurants industry. So we needed to show them a lot of overwhelming support along with other nonprofit groups in order for this to pass. And the ordinance is especially important for us right now as we're trying to build momentum, moving into a ballot measure that's going to be happening in California in November that would phase out most single-use plastics in the state. So this method is really effective in terms of getting policy passed on local level like this, or even at the statewide and national level. Next slide. So one of the ways that we can make these really big changes is through lobbying our elected officials on bills that are important to us as students. And at CALPIRG every year, we hold a statewide lobby day where all of our chapters across the state come together to meet with dozens of elected officials and let them know the priorities of students. So this year, we lobbied on a lot of public interest and environmental bills, like reducing plastic pollution in online deliveries, banning bee-killing neonic pesticides and PFAS forever chemicals in cosmetics. And we also talked about some things in the governor's budget plan about electric vehicle infrastructure and the cost of textbooks in higher education. And so the way that we make all of this happen is by gathering students across the state and holding a lobby conference where we learn about all of the issues we're going to be speaking about, which we all will have had a lot of experience on because these are the things that we have been campaigning for, working towards the whole year. We also just learn how to do a lobby meeting, how to lobby, those kinds of skills, and split into teams, which are each led by a student leader. So all of the lobby meetings are really well run and by students. And the lobby meeting was like crucial for building confidence and knowledge in order for us to be successful and effective. Next slide. So then we are able to do the actual meetings. Normally, we would do them in person. We would all go to the Capitol in Sacramento. But of course, during the pandemic, that's not possible. But what that does allow us to do is have more students participate and be able to set up even more meetings. So at our CALPIRG Lobby Day in February, we held 60 meetings with 80 students across the state, where we deliver a packet that has all of the campaign products we've collected, and we're able to gauge their interest on various issues, as well as asking them to consider taking an action like co-sponsoring a bill or committing to vote for it. And this works really well. We can really express our opinions directly to the source. And this picture in the middle is from Assembly Speaker Anthony Brendan, who actually retweeted us after the meeting. Next slide, please. So then what can you do about this? There's a lot of different lobby meetings you can join with either the student PIRG system or a lot of different nonprofits also run lobby days. You can also organize your own lobby day or just set up an individual meeting with your elected official. You don't have to be part of an organization at all to be able to do that. Also, a more low-key version of that is like calling or sending emails or letters to your elected officials about things that are important to you. These people might seem really far off, but we do have access to them and you can contact them and get your voices heard. And I also have my contact information on the screen. If you're interested in emailing me something, I'll totally respond to that. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks so much. I really love the breakup with plastics. I think that's really, really cute around Valentine's Day. Really great. Thanks for sharing all that. For folks joining in, that was Clara talking about lobbying at UCLA. Now I'm going to pass it over to Emma, who's at the University of Florida.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about first how I got involved with the Surfrider Foundation, and then just a little bit about the local policy in my area. Again, I go to the University of Florida, so I'm from the South Florida area. And as a freshman in high school, I started a Surfrider youth club at my school. If you're interested in that, you can go on the website, and there is an area where you can do an application if you're in high school or if you're in college. So we did a lot of events, lots of beach cleanups, and it's a really awesome way to get involved. It's also super fun. So definitely start your own club if you're a student and you're interested in that. Also, when I was a freshman, I started to get involved with local policy because I was working with local activists in my community to plan these events and plan beach cleanups and do things like that. So one of us discovered that there was an ordinance that was made in the 1990s and it had not been enforced. And it basically banned plastic on our beach, Hollywood Beach, which is a big deal. So we met with the city's green team and we eventually got support to get it reinforced. So as of October 1st, 2018, it's been reinforced. We have an enforcement officer and everything. And this basically just showed me the power of what a few people could do, because I just didn't expect us to be able to do that, especially in such a short amount of time. And one of these people that had been kind of guiding me and helping me along was my neighbor, who now works for Oceana. And she works on policy in South Florida, and she wanted to work with me on passing a ban in Fort Lauderdale. And we had to look at kind of the preemption language in Florida. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of just a set of like guidelines for what you can and can't pass. And we decided that we could pass a foam ban on city properties, facilities, and contracts. So we made sure we could pass this. We emailed commissioners separately. We spoke to some of them virtually, and we used examples of similar ordinances from Largo County and Orange County to show that this worked and that it did make an impact. And eventually the city attorney got it on the meeting agenda. So for the final reading, I went to the meeting virtually, and then my friend Skylar went to the meeting in person. He's there with the mayor. And it was really awesome because we had a lot of students online who made posters and who were just there in support of it. So unfortunately, we couldn't be seen on the screen, but it was great to know that there were so many people supporting this. And it actually passed unanimously, which was really awesome. So now that's a ban in Fort Lauderdale. So if you don't know where to start, this is kind of where I want to focus on. You should definitely attend city meetings. It's really great to get to know your commissioners, your mayor, your representatives, especially locally. You should be able to see your mayor or commissioners at different events. They should be pretty involved. And it's great to just go to meetings, events, meet your community, and you'll be able to find nonprofits and people that have similar interests and goals as you. And I think that's really important because I was lucky enough to have like all these mentors, these people that were helping me who are also very involved. But over time, I've gotten to meet more people that have the same interests that I do. And what really helped me was to ask questions. If you don't know what's going on, or if you're unfamiliar with something, it's great to just ask. And to do your own research too. It's nice to know what your commissioners prioritize, especially I know a lot of people are from LA and from California. So it's nice to know what they want to focus on, especially with environmental issues in your area. And I would say also just think about what's important to you, what makes your city or your state special. I know that in my area, they were trying to build a condo on the beach, and a lot of people just were showing up to meetings and kind of being really against that. So it's just nice that there's like a group of people who have the same kind of goal, because it's like starting to change the city's mind. And again, to get involved in the community, reach out to organizations like Surfrider. We love it. You can follow your local chapter on social media. And again, you can use the link that I sent earlier in the chat if you're not sure if you have a club or a chapter nearby, but you probably do since most of you are from California. And don't be afraid to check city event calendars, Facebook pages to kind of just see what's going on in your area. And don't be afraid to exchange information, just connect with people and offer your help. So a few more things. If you want to contact me, my email's there, my Instagram, my high school Surfrider Club's Instagram, and then my college one is there too. And then if you are interested in finding your congressional representative, I think that's super important. So you could just follow those steps and kind of just learn more about them and where their priorities lie. And you can find your local Surfrider chapter or club, like I said before, and start a club. I think that those are just some really great ways to get involved, and especially meet people in your area that have the same goals as you. Thank you.
So great. So many wins and just a freshman in college. Very, very cool. Far ahead of where I was at that time. Let's pass it over to you, Alex, who's going to talk about how you can make an impact on campuses.
Great. Okay. So just for some context, I got involved with our Florida PIRG Students chapter back in 2018, organizing on the midterm elections. And I was really empowered by all of the work that was happening during the midterm elections. We turned out hundreds of students to vote that year, which is really exciting. But I wanted to take all of that organizing experience and channel it into something that was environmentally focused. And I go to Eckerd, which is right on the water. We have a beach on campus, which is great. But I got to see all the plastic pollution just floating by, and my school really marketed itself as a sustainable institution, whatever that may mean. but I saw that we were using quite a lot of non-essential single-use plastics. So I decided to launch a campaign that is on the campaign slide that was shown earlier, called the Breakthrough from Plastics campaign, which focused on getting Eckerd to sign the Breakthrough from Plastic Campus Pledge, which I'll put in the chat here, which essentially operates as a purchasing policy that eliminates purchasing for all non-essential single-use plastics on college campuses, high school campuses, or whatever it may be. Fortunately, we won that campaign. Eckerd was the second school in the country to sign the Breakthrough from Plastic Pledge and the first school to implement a policy of this kind. So we're actually deep in the implementation process now, which is exciting to see. And since Eckerd signed, there have been multiple other campuses also taking the same path, which has just gone to show that college campuses serve as really powerful hubs for creating change. One of the main reasons for that is just that we have a lot of people here. Using the University of California system as an example, there are over 500,000 people who work at or are enrolled in the University of California system. So that's a lot of people that are going to be impacted by a policy like this or exposed to conversations around single-use plastic. So there's just that. There's a lot of people to organize around. We can create effective grassroots organizing models, but also effective models for what a zero waste or plastic-free society can look like. So it's pretty exciting to use campuses in that way, but we also have a ton of purchasing power. Eckerd is a pretty small school, but again, using the University of California system as an example, that's billions of dollars that will be diverted away from the plastics industry. And that makes a huge, huge message to the plastics industry and these corporations on what students want and what we're expecting out of our college education. So by getting campuses to commit, we can further show the plastics industry what young people are prioritizing. And speaking of young people, obviously colleges have a lot of us, and it's really not a movement without young folks involved. Clara mentioned this in the beginning slide, but our mission as a student PIRG is to give young people the tools that we need to make a difference, because there has never been a successful movement for change without young people involved. If you're looking at the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War protests, right now, the modern climate change movement, and obviously the movement to decrease our non-essential single-use plastic consumption are all spearheaded by young folks. So campuses are a really key part in creating any successful movement. Next slide. So yeah, we've been really successful in using campuses to push for the movement to decrease single-use plastic consumption. Since Eckerd has signed the pledge, 8 others have signed on, making it a total of 9 campuses, plus the entire University of California school system. So that's hundreds of thousands of people who are now exposed to narratives surrounding decreasing single-use plastic consumption. And really an entire movement of young people decreasing our single-use plastic consumption has been created. This has also been really engaging for local politicians as well. Using St. Pete as an example, after Eckerd signed the pledge, our city council members took notice and started to get really excited about potentially replicating our pledge on a citywide level, which we're currently in the process of doing here. So campuses also have a really large impact on the greater community as well. But one of the things that we like to push in our campaign is that this cannot just be an individual impact. We have to engage corporations, larger governments, city governments, the national government. And one of the main tactics that Eckerd used and that a lot of campus campaigns use are brand audits. So next slide. So these are, if you don't know, but I'm assuming maybe a lot of people in the audience have already done a brand audit or maybe heard of it. These are essentially an addition to a beach cleanup where you keep the trash for a little bit longer, spend an extra 30 minutes or so sifting through it all to find the corporation or brand names who produce that plastic. And this creates a sense of corporate accountability because, as I think most of us here know, corporations have to take accountability for their plastic consumption. It cannot just be on the consumer. So by doing this, we're able to hold these corporations accountable and say, Coca-Cola, for example, is the #1 polluter on my college campus, and shape our policy around that and inform our campaigns to be able to go to our administration and say exactly why we need to sign something like the Breakthrough from Plastic Pledge. So these brand audits can be done by groups or individuals any time of the year. It would be a really great Earth Day activity, for example, if you're looking for something to do. And I'm going to put a link in the chat to the Breakthrough from Plastics brand audit page where you can find all of the information you need to be able to run a brand audit, and also submit your data to the Global Brand Audit Report, which is published annually and is used as a really big leveraging mechanism to hold these brands accountable. So Eckerd did tons of brand audits throughout our campaign, and it was a real asset to getting the Breakthrough from Plastic pledge signed. And next slide. But overall, if you are a student watching and this has you thinking maybe you want to run a campaign to decrease single-use plastic consumption on your campus or get the Breakthrough from Plastic pledge signed, definitely feel free to reach out. I'll put my contact information in the chat as well. And if you're an organization, there are tons of ways that you can support students who are running campaigns like this, whether it's through just providing your expertise, going to events, co-sponsoring events. Definitely don't be afraid to engage with young folks who are also working on their campuses, and use brand audits as a tool in your campaign. And if you're looking for an Earth Day activity, this is a great quick thing to do to be able to hold corporations accountable for their plastic waste as well. But happy to answer more questions about the specifics of campaign organizing and brand audits, but I'll pass that back to Dawn for now.
Great. Yeah, definitely love seeing the brand audits, because a lot of the corporate line is, why don't you individually do something? Who made this stuff in the first place? I have truly no idea. It's a really great way to hold them accountable overall. Thanks, Alex. And if you have questions that you're ruminating, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A as we go. And before we get to that, we're going to pass it last but not least to Dillon. Going back to California, I can see the wind in your hair, and it's just such a lovely view.
Yes, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. Yeah, thank you so much. So lovely to be in this space with all of you. And yeah, to kind of build off what Alex was saying with brand audits, I'd like to share some more hands-on applications that we do at Surfrider here at Cal Poly, as well as what my wonderful panelists have been sharing, as well as kind of sharing a mindset we need to shift to and foster to kind of make, or at least embrace a consciousness to move forward with. So at Cal Poly Surfrider chapter, some things we are doing include, as we do with beach cleanups, collecting all of that data and documenting all of what we pick up. And through sorting all of that, then we can influence things like policy change and brand audits, as Alex was saying. Another thing we do is water quality testing at local beaches run by our Blue Water Task Force, where we collect water samples and then process them in a lab on campus and test for a family of bacteria, also making that data set to then be used on bigger scales. So yeah, we upload all of this data to Surfrider National, who then can pool this data and use it to back policies and introduce and advocate for other changes on a national field. And so it may not seem like one piece of trash you pick up may make a difference, but every bit of data we document is one step further to influencing policymakers, driving laws, and bringing awareness to the bigger problems to hopefully one day solve at the source level. And it's a stepping stone to change our mindset, to then change the way of doing and not doing trash, if you will. So yeah, this leads me to my next topic, which is the mindset we must foster to move forward, brought to light by the act of picking up trash. In addition to the data, this act is a reconnection to our home, our environment to which we are guests to, and a reconnection and a reflection to how our impacts or the impacts of institutions have substantial influences on the environment and all of our systems. So what does that mean to rethink our relationship with trash? And you can go to the next slide. At Surfrider, we have a team called Rise Above Plastics. And through alternative education and activism, we are raising awareness and helping make this paradigm shift through what we call artivism, campaigns from art contests using trash as the medium to cigarette butt collections, various reusable utensil campaigns, and clothing swaps, as well as our upcoming Sustainability Film Festival on Friday, documenting sustainable oriented films. All different mediums to engage, present, and reflect. So you can go to the next slide. So another amazing illustration of this is how biomimicry, looking towards nature for inspiration, can help us make this mindset shift. How can looking towards nature, biomimicry, help us reflect on our practices and inspire a system rooted in regeneration and harmony? This is something that is very close to me, and I am working with and trying to integrate in all aspects of my life. But how does rethinking our relationship to trash help us shift our mindset to one of stewardship instead of exploitation, of gratitude instead of ignorance? And what if we look towards nature? In nature, there's no waste. Everything is a part of a continuous circular system. When a tree falls, it becomes the soil in which new plants grow, where insects make a home and where fungi flourish. When we throw away a fork, where does that go? What home does it create? And also, what home does it destroy? How can our waste not be waste anymore, but opportunity? And that's the kind of mindset we need to start looking through. So in part, it's a window through which we may look forward to from how hard data can influence policy change at the source, and how fostering a mindset like biomimicry of system thinking rooted in regeneration can give us a light of hope. And so you can go to the next slide. And yeah, so you can reach out to me at that email there, and also scan this QR code, which goes to all of our resources at our student club chapter in San Luis Obispo, and where you can find resources to all of our water testing and different ways to get involved locally and nationally. And also there should be a link in there if you're in the area, San Luis Obispo, California. We have a film festival coming up on Friday, and 7 to 10. So make sure to look out for that as well. But yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate that last slide on the circular economy. And I think we're finally now in a place in the movement where I remember in like the 2000s, 2009, 10, when I was a student, showing my age, when we were just banning one item at a time. And now California has all these great bills that actually make producers of trash responsible for it, which I think is, at the end, what we've got to do in order to create more reuse systems, because it's obviously possible. We didn't have plastic at all in the 20s, and somehow we still lived and were able to pick up our dog poo. So we just need to go back to that. I love it.
Totally.
So much for sharing all those stories, all of you. From the creative ideas on your campuses to engage people, all the way to the specific policies that you've been able to pass without, even having graduated from college, I think is certainly an inspiration to me, and hopefully, and I know an inspiration to everyone else on this call as well. We've got a great question here that I'm going to kick to Alex first, because I think it really ties back to where you're from in Houston overall. Folks can see in the chat, a lot of students fail to see the connection between plastic and trash and the impact it has on people. I do think that's the case that over years, we've talked a lot about sea turtles and the environment. What are some ways that you've talked about the single-use plastics problem in a way that brings it back to its whole life cycle?
That is a great question, and actually is one of the reasons I really wanted to get involved with the plastics movement, is because I was seeing that gap. And like Dawn mentioned, I'm from Houston. So growing up, I was used to seeing the impacts of the petrochemical industry, and 99% of plastics are made from fossil fuels. Houston has one of the largest plastics manufacturing facilities in the country. And so I grew up understanding plastics as an environmental issue, but also as a human health issue, and as one of the top contributors to climate change. If the plastics industry were a country, it would be the 5th largest contributor of greenhouse gases in the world. And just using that statistic has actually been a really helpful way to get other young people to see the impact, or the connection rather, between plastics and climate change. And that really, making that connection is one of the biggest pushers to getting more young people involved in the plastics movement. So really pushing on how big of a contributor plastics is to climate change is a big one. And then also the human health aspect as well, and the environmental justice aspect as well. I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood that was just a few miles away from one of those extremely large petrochemical facilities. So just allowing people to see that plastics is bad at every single point of its life cycle, from extraction of fossil fuels to the production process, to when we consume it, to when it's transported, to the attempted disposal of plastic. Every single person is impacted in some way because we all use plastic. So thinking about location wise and creating specific examples, because I bet regardless of where you're at in the country, you can feel the impact of the plastics industry. So in Florida, we talk a lot about burning and incineration here in St. Petersburg, as well as the climate change impact. And that is a way to really humanize the issue. So that answers the question. There's a lot of ways to do that though.
Great, yeah, great answer. I think if you do have, if you live in a place that has some of that infrastructure, I think it's a good idea to do a toxics tour. I went on one of those, and you can go to some of these petrochemical facilities or an incineration or landfill facility and just sort of see the physical impact of it. And I think it can be quite jarring for students. It certainly was for me, even having done the work for a long time. I'm going to jump in, moderator's privilege here. I want to hear more about y'all's stories. What got you into plastics specifically? I think a lot of folks kind of feel like they can't make an impact on an issue so big. We have folks on the call who remember when there weren't plastics and now it's ubiquitous. So I certainly get demotivated. What got you motivated to get involved and feeling like you could actually make a difference? I'll let whoever's ready just jump in.
I can speak. I'm a sociology major. I really believe in like the power of societal changes. And that actually started for me. I talked a little bit about SB 100 in California earlier, and that passed when I was in high school. And that was like something that was just such a big step towards the fight against climate change. And I really didn't think that anyone was going to be able to solve climate change. I didn't think that was possible. And so when that happened, I was like, wait, it is possible to take these big steps. I can do this. I can do this too. And when that really clicked for me with plastics was when I found out about the impact it had on climate change, and like the move towards renewable energy is not going to solve everything if we're still using all these fossil fuels to make plastics. And so I was really passionate about that. I was like, this is an area that people are not talking about. I always thought that the plastic problem was about what was about trash in the ocean, was about sea turtles. I didn't understand the other aspects of climate change and the public health things. So with that, I really just thought that I could apply that to the plastics issue and that I could make a difference on that. And so that's how I sort of got involved.
I can jump in as well. So in middle school, my teacher took me to a plastic pollution summit in California, which was really awesome. And since then I went back 2 more times, but when I got to high school, I started to kind of get involved with like that little group of activists. And one of them was my neighbor. And at the time she worked for Surfrider. So she encouraged me to start my own club and to apply and everything. And just since then, like I've made so many friends and connections, and I got lucky because at my school, I had a lot of great friends who were interested in marine science. We're right by the beach, so kind of makes sense, but we have this big marine biology club. And so a lot of students who were in that kind of just like drifted over to my club as well. So that was really awesome. But I think if you just like let yourself get involved, put yourself out there, like you'll definitely make the connections that you want to have.
Yeah, definitely amazing stories. I think just to add like a little snippet, I think for me, I was very fortunate to kind of be born into a very environmentally conscious and steward mindset, family and community. And so that was kind of always a core value of mine. But I think when I got to college or late high school, plastics definitely was kind of a medium to take action in a way that as Clara was saying, it itself isn't the problem, but it's a way to get out to address and use as a platform to address so many other issues and problems at the source level. And I think plastic and doing beach cleanups is such a great way to get your hands on some data and get your hands actively participating and then seeing all the connections and where you can go and how far you can go just from having plastics as a foundation to then influence all these other aspects that are all connected. So yeah.
And I've touched on my story a little bit, but very similar to that, Dillon. I came to Eckerd knowing that I wanted to do something about the environment because I grew up in Houston and Hurricane Harvey was my senior year, and I knew I wanted to do something about climate change. So I was an environmental studies major, but that's all I knew. And then I started registering people to vote and started learning about plastics. And when you learn about the climate change impact, the human health impact, and the personal impact it had for my community back home, it just seemed ridiculous that I would spend my time doing anything other than organizing to get rid of that product. So that's what I did. And I happen to really like it as well. So that's kind of what clicked for me.
That's great. So inspiring. Got to recruit at UCLA. I love that. Multiple groups to join there between Surfrider and the PIRGs across the country. Great. So we've got a question about microplastics. Can we do something about microplastics on campuses? Is there something we can do to reduce that type of plastic?
I can answer. So on the issue of microplastics, that's a very big and new topic that I think people are really starting to understand the threat of sort of recently. The biggest thing with plastic pollution is that there's so much plastic out there in the ocean, but there's only going to continue to be more and more because we keep making more single-use plastics, we keep putting them out there. So one of the best things that we can do to not have there be so many microplastics is by not producing so many single-use plastics. That will just reduce the amount of plastic that there is on the planet, in the oceans, so that they won't become microplastics. In terms of cleaning up the microplastics, trying to limit them from escaping from plastic products, there's a big issue with like polyester and fibers in our laundry. There's a lot of individual bills addressing things like that, and you can also try to pass policies on individual campuses. But the most influential, impactful thing is going to be not producing so much plastic to begin with. And we can focus a lot on trying to limit the harms and clean up the microplastics after we sort of stop the flow of single-use plastics. To begin with, the analogy is that if your bathtub is overflowing, the first thing you have to do is turn off the tap. You can start mopping up the floor later, but it will be the most impactful, most helpful for you to turn that off first. So there's a lot of different things you can do, but the most important thing is just limit the amount of single-use plastics that are being produced in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's a big question for the scientific community for sure. I've heard that there's some funguses that eat microplastics and plastics, but like very difficult to deploy at scale. So something we need to figure out. If there are any science folks on wondering what their major should be, maybe that is one thing you could take on. We've got a question on how the pandemic has impacted organizing. The online environment has opened access to legislators. We saw, you don't have to drive to Sacramento to get everyone to lobby. I remember when I was a student, the UCSD students had to go 12 hours through LA to get to lobby day, and now you can just sort of hop on a Zoom. But it also has made things more difficult. I think in team building, meeting folks that you've been working with overall. Has it helped your work? In what ways has it hindered your work? I think anyone who wants to hop on this one can answer.
I can jump in. My mom asked that question, which is kind of funny, but I think personally with Surfrider, we have something similar to Student PIRG, which is like we have a Coastal Recreation Hill Day where we meet with legislators at the federal level And usually it's in person. I haven't been in person, but the last 2 years it's been online. And I think that that's definitely helped because like there's a lot of costs that are reduced to like be able to travel to meet legislators. Like instead we can just do it online. And I just think in general, like when the pandemic started, like I just noticed that I was able to like have meetings with like my commissioners virtually, like on Zoom. And I think that that's something that's still kind of like happening. So in some ways it's hindered it because it's definitely it's definitely easier to be face to face with someone and to kind of like actually talk to them and like form that connection better. But I think in a lot of ways it's like increase the number of like connections and interactions you can have with your legislators.
We love questions from moms. Thanks, Mom. Good job. Any other folks want to hop on how the pandemic has impacted organizing overall?
Yeah, I think it's been a very interesting thing to play out because I think, as Emma was saying, it's the access to farther, more, whether it's price of traveling or just the convenience of having it virtual to reach so many more people, I think is an amazing thing to come, like one silver lining. But I think on the other side, to get doing beach cleanups and getting the hard data, I think was really hard over the pandemic, just because we weren't able to be in a safe environment and work together on the ground to really support the data and to then support the policy changes. But I think going forward, I definitely see a space in which both can be utilized for the benefit of all, and I think that's an amazing thing that I hope we can kind of continue to do, because I think being virtual certain times can prove very beneficial and reach a lot of people, and just have more access. But we still need that groundwork.
Definitely. All right, we have a question from Samantha. What are your recommendations for involving younger children and students about sustainable practices, and how can we help them get involved?
I think one of the most important things to do is to make it enjoyable, which might seem really obvious, but to make this something that young kids and even other college students want to do. So we did a lot of hands-on, like DIY events where we made your own sunscreen, make your own bags. We do trash talks actually at Eckerd on Thursdays and have pizza and like vegan zero waste desserts there, and make these events that people want to go to. So that changes the narrative around being zero waste or being low waste as something that you can do whenever, and it's a fun event that people will want to go to. So just doing things that bring people in naturally and not necessarily forcing this on the community, because now at Eckerd, not having plastic fits into who we are, and it's a part of our campus culture because it's something we all bought into and it's something we genuinely enjoy. So fun events. Everyone loves a fun event.
Great. All right, from Isa, what are your opinions on compostable plastics? Are they viable solutions to our issues? And what do you see as our best alternatives?
Happy to hop in here. I have lots of opinions on compostable plastics. The long story short is that I'm not a huge fan because a lot of the time plant-based plastics can be used as a cop-out mechanism, and usually they need to be composted using an industrial composter, which are incredibly expensive. Most municipalities don't have access to them yet. That's the dream. And so they can't actually be composted and generally degrade at the same rate as normal fossil fuel-based plastics. The best alternative is reusable. And in a lot of cases, what we're using as a single-use option can be replaced as a reusable. I think it's an important note to say that we're not advocating for banning all plastics, but putting emphasis on non-essential single-use plastics, where 9 times out of 10, you can use a cup instead, or you can bring your own plate, bring your own bowl, carry bamboo utensils in your bag, and that alone will phase out a lot of the non-essential plastics that we're using on a day-to-day basis. So composting can be great if you have the facilities for it. At Eckerd, with part of our transition process, we now use backyard compostable supplies that are actual wood, and we have a composting facility on campus. I know the University of South Florida St. Pete campus actually has an industrial composter where they compost some of their bigger things on campus. I'm very jealous of them. So it's definitely possible to use some of these things, but it's important to remember that the best solution is to not use plastic at all. It's to use the reusable option that we can use time and time again, and get rid of the mindset of using a disposable option because it's easy or because it's there.
We forget that it's reduce first and then reuse and then recycle or compost. And I think, you know, now we're in this mindset where we create a fork from petrochemicals across an ocean and then use it for 5 minutes, and somehow that makes more sense. So it's totally insane, the system we've created. Okay. So we've got one more question on what do we do with single-use plastics on restaurants and takeout services. And then, okay, last one from Donald after that on recycling programs. And we do have a question about sustainable transportation. And I'm going to punt that to you, Clara, because I know that CALPIRG's doing a bunch around that in California. And then we will wrap from there. So what should folks do if they are given single-use plastics by restaurants?
I'm going to jump in really quickly because I think this is a good opportunity to talk about one of Surfrider's programs. But I think if you are given single-use plastics, if you just like check the bag before you leave, you can always just like give them back to them really politely. Or if you're ordering like online or you call ahead to get your food, I would just like request that you don't get utensils if you don't need them. But Surfrider has a really great program that's tackling this called the Ocean Friendly Restaurants Program. And if you're looking to get involved, this is also a really amazing thing to do because you basically just go to a restaurant, tell them about the criteria of the program, and it just aims to like reduce the use of plastic in the restaurant. Like they just follow certain criteria. I can get the link in just a second and send it in the chat. But it's something that's been really effective for Surfrider, and we just noticed that it's definitely making a change. So it's great to like go to a restaurant that you know is ocean friendly if there's one near you. So I would definitely suggest doing that as well. I'll get the link right now.
Yeah, it's a great program that rewards businesses for doing the right thing. And I know that quite a few of the sponsors of this webinar worked to get Yelp to actually have a sustainable business option just recently launched. So you can also get businesses that you know they're doing the right thing mark on their own Yelp page that they don't single-use plastics, or they use actually recyclables there. So definitely check that out. Yelp is looking to see if the program will be successful. And so if a lot of businesses opt in the first few weeks, we think that'll drive them to keep that draft feature. Okay, a lot of recycling programs don't actually recycle. That is true. Less than 9%, 6% according to some studies. What do we do about that? Perhaps we could pass a bill in California recently.
I can speak on this first, and I don't know if Dillon wants to jump in as well. Yes, recycling is a huge problem. The system is completely flawed. It does not work very well at all. The bill that Don is speaking about is this summer in California, we passed a bill called the Truth in Recycling Bill. And what that did was it made it so that things that have the recycling logo on them are recyclable. This is a little bit disturbing that this bill had to be passed because it lets us know that that was not the case before. There's also a little bit of a deception thing where the plastic labeling system looks extremely similar to the recycling symbol. So oftentimes you could interpret things as being recyclable, but they're just saying that this is a type of plastic. So there's a lot of issues around around recycling. We're working towards solutions. As a individual person, the best things that you can do are just try to use less waste. Because the recycling systems are so flawed, there's not a lot that we can do as individuals to try to make sure that our things get recycled. Especially I think Alex touched on this a little bit earlier, there's variation in your local areas of what is recyclable and what is not. So we need major reform of the recycling system and also just relying on it less by just producing less of this disposable stuff, especially because plastic is not infinitely recyclable. So that's not a forever solution. We will still have to keep producing plastic if we want to rely on that. So yeah, that's what I want to say. I don't know if Dillon, if you want to add to that.
No, I think you touched on everything pretty much. I think, it really comes to education and just educating yourself, making sure you really know what is actually recyclable in your current location, and really trying to, share that that knowledge with others, because they get very finicky and very particular about, if it has food on it, it's not recyclable anymore. And if it has a narrow neck, they make it very hard to, it's not black and white. And so make sure to be very educated with that, and then use that as a way to be like, okay, why is this? And start to ask those questions, so we can hold the corporations accountable, and make sure there's no greenwashing either with compostables, and making sure people aren't just using compostable or going to compostable utensils as a kind of false narrative, saying oh, we're going green and you can compost these, but then if we don't have the facilities, they're just as bad. So making sure we're holding accountable of just all the practices that we're talking about, I guess.
Okay. We've got 2 minutes left. So I want to just give folks a last word. Any last advice that you'd give to everyone on the call on how they can contribute to the movement? What do you think folks should do?
I can start this off. Oh, Dillon, do you want to go?
Oh no, you go for it. Go for it.
Oh, okay. My one piece of advice would be to reach out to your elected officials. They are supposed to listen to you. They're supposed to represent you. You don't have to be part of any organization to express your opinions. You can contact them in a variety of ways. You just have to look up on the internet how to do so. You can contact people at the local level, state level, or national level. Just get your voices heard. These people are supposed to listen to you, so definitely do it.
Yes, totally amazing advice right there. I definitely say, in addition to that, everyone has something to give, and so whatever you're passionate about, whatever you identify as something that you can give that. And we can't give everything, but we can give what we can. And so I guess start there. Definitely, look for people also already doing work, and support them and just join them in the effort, because they always need support and more hands. And so identifying local organizations near you can be very beneficial. And also just asking those questions and being curious into what is really going on a personal basis and more global and all the interconnections. But I think raising those questions of, why do we have waste? Why is there such a term of why is that waste even a word in our society? And how can we learn from nature to, change that mindset? And so I think that's definitely a critical viewpoint.
I Oh,
Emma,
sorry.
you got it. You got it, Emma.
I just had something really quick because like basically I think what Dylan said about like getting involved, like yes, I think that's the best thing you can do. But I think just like find organizations that have like the same interests and goals as you, and just put yourself out there. Like most of the opportunities that I've been given are because like I put myself out there and like I looked for those opportunities and I applied to things, and a lot of times like I didn't get the position or something, but still doing that like helped me build connections. So I would just say like keep trying. If you feel like you really want to like make a huge impact and you feel like you're not getting there, like just keep reaching out to different organizations and just doing what you can.
And I think all of those things, and to just remember to work in a capacity that works for you. If voter registration is your thing, that is also contributing to supporting the plastics movement. If you really want to work on solar energy, that is also contributing to supporting the plastics movement. And you don't have to run a huge campaign to get your college campus to commit to phasing out non-essential single-use plastics. You can also just get your family to stop buying single-use utensils. That could be a campaign. Any level of action on this works and is important and will contribute to the movement in the long term. So scale that isn't as important here. It's just doing what works for you and doing it in a way that's effective for your capacity.
Great, thank you so much, y'all. So inspiring to hear all of your stories. I definitely learned a lot. Everyone who is on, you'll have the opportunity to reach out all of these folks. I think you have their contact info, but if you missed it, you can definitely respond to the RSVP. We can get you connected. And then if you're in, not California or Florida, both Surfrider, the student PIRGs, and then all the sponsors that we have listed on this webinar have resources all across the country. So wherever you are, we can find a group for you to work with. Looking forward to seeing all of your successes coming out of this webinar. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.